What's the deal?
What's the deal?
What's the
What's the
deal?
deal?
What's the deal?
What's the deal?
Yo, what's the deal?
What's the deal?
What's the deal?
What's the deal?
Hey, what's the deal?
What's good, everybody? I'm Steve Discourse.
What up, y'all? It's your girl, Jay Callie.
Back again for another episode of What's the Deal? It was cold as hell this week.
Virginia is getting a new black governor. How's that to kick off Black History Month?
Senate Republicans are calling voting a power grab by the Democrats.
And later on, we got an interview with a school psychologist, Jasmine Fassett from the DMV.
So yeah, it was freezing this week across pretty much every part of the country.
Including D.C., and I was not happy with it at all. I'm going to tell you one day how mad I got. I ordered an Uber, right? And they do this all the time. The Uber says, I'm here. I go outside. I'm looking. He's nowhere. He's not out there. He's 2 blocks up. I see the blinking lights. I see the car. I'm like, this guy is going to have to back up and come back up. I'm not walking 2 blocks in this cold. So I called him. He didn't answer. Called him again. He didn't answer. I'm like, I'm looking at you sitting there doing nothing. And you're not, I hate it when they don't answer the phone. So I was automatically mad. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to cancel this ride. I refuse to walk 2 blocks. I was mad at him, but I was also mad at myself for this because I was coming from class and you have to like buzz in to the building. And I didn't have my key, so I couldn't buzz back in. So I ordered another Uber, but then I had to stand outside and wait for it. And it was so cold. I was mad the whole time. Just like,
It was too cold for that
because
nonsense.
my Uber driver wants to pull up 2 blocks and can't back up or turn around.
This is where the value in just reading street addresses can come in, because he probably just
Nobody
followed the
does
app.
it. Yes.
But it's a trick. Anyway, we don't want to get into that because there's a lot of glitches and trickiness in that app, using that service.
The dot showed him exactly where I was at. He just didn't care about it.
Exactly. So one major problem we find is, when cold like this happens, anytime extreme weather happens, right, there's health risks, and specifically some people die. Not a lot, but there have been reports across the country of homeless folks freezing to death out on the street.
Yes.
And that's wild. And we've had conversations in the past about how to deal with homelessness, whether it's even like ethical that homelessness is a thing that exists. Like, how do we let these people literally live on the street and then arrest them for living on the street?
Right.
Like, there's so many existential problems around this issue of homelessness. And then when cold like this happens, it just magnifies that, because now we have their deaths front and center in headlines everywhere. And it's just, I don't know, that's where my mind goes when I hear stories about this, when I hear stories about the freezing cold. I saw a graphic in a paper recently where it showed the average temperatures it needs to get overnight before homeless shelters in different regions across the country open. And you'd be shocked, like up in the north where it's really cold, it's got to be below freezing sometimes before the homeless shelters open up for winter. And like, I can't, it's almost based on like average temperatures and climate in the area, as opposed to, you would think, well, how warm does it need to be for a human being to live, right? And it's really sick, and we don't really have, honestly, an end ask or goal with this conversation. It's just something on my mind that I really wanted to get out there, that we need to fund programs better. We need to be more open to different ideas and ways of thinking, how we handle homelessness. And to be honest with you, these things are paid, and a lot of times through tax money, and we need to be willing to pony up for that and put in on it. And I know people are always mad about taxes,
Right.
They took how much out of my paycheck? Yeah, this and that. I get it. I know. I want some more breathing room too. But at the same time, the more breathing room we get for ourselves, the more wild stuff like this happens on a regular basis that we really accept. And I don't know, man, that's just hard for me to live with.
And as it should be, because you're a human being who is capable of empathy for other people. Like, who would imagine when they're going through their life and they're young and vibrant who would imagine that, like, when they're going through their life and they're young and vibrant, that one day they're going to die from just being cold? Like, nobody thinks that.
we've just got too many resources in this country, I think. And honestly, that becomes a political or social debate as to, we've got a lot of resources, but that's up to you to go get them. It's not up to me to make sure you got them. And to an extent, I guess that's fair. But I think we've just got so much extra in this country that we can give you a bed. We can give you a cot next to 100 other people's cots in a huge open space for you to at least just sleep so you're not dying on the street. I think that's bare minimum.
Even if it's just overnight.
Even if you're a terrible person, you know what? Like, you scum of the earth. You know what? You can have a cot on me. I don't mind. Like, there's no sweat off of me. I'm doing all right. Where if that's your hustle, if your hustle is getting over on cots to sleep in at night, then you got me. You hustled me, right? It's not a big deal. So I don't understand why people stress over stuff like that. But speaking of the lack of empathy, we'll transition into, because I haven't done an update lately on cops behaving badly.
Come on with it.
And a cop in Detroit has been documented as he pulled a woman over for expired tabs on the car, and he took her car.
What?
And made this woman walk home this week. And
in the freezing temperatures.
In this weather this week, yeah.
Oh, my God.
So lack of empathy on two parts. First, any kind of documentation, violation, stuff like that. I mean, people are driving home after that.
Right.
Most of the time. You know, that's something that people aren't getting arrested for. I mean, it's like run of the mill, here's a ticket, get your documentation straight, right? You're driving with no insurance, here's a ticket, right? It's so rare that you actually have to arrest people in these situations. I mean, somebody hit me while I was driving one time. I didn't have a license. Long story, I had moved from one place to another, and I wasn't driving for a while, so it expired. And no, I mean, he gave me a ticket for driving without a license.
Damn.
And I went on my way. Now, the accident wasn't my fault. Maybe if I caused the accident, might be escalate the situation. They say, you out here really, acting wild, so we got to take you in. But, like, these things happen a lot, and people say, they give you a slap on the wrist, and they move along. Why, in this record-breaking frigid temperatures, as a police officer, protect and serve, be out there in the community, you're a good person, sacrificing, putting yourself on the line to do better for other people, as all these tropes go, right? Why would you do that to a person? Give her the ticket and get her on her way. Now, here's what makes it worse. Social media, this cop posts a caption that says, "This is what black girl magic looks like."
The same cop?
Yeah, this cop. He took a picture of her.
Black.
He took a picture of her, yeah.
Oh, I saw that. Wait a minute. So that was not... I was like, I don't get it. Why are we calling this black girl magic? Because she's walking? I was confused. Yeah. So it was sarcasm.
It was the most vile kind of, contempt, pettiness?
That's racism.
Well, yeah.
Because he obviously has a problem with the term black girl magic.
Right. So here you go. And this really piggybacks on the conversations we had the other day about how racism can pick up and manifest itself in just completely unprovoked brutality. In this case, I think is really brutality. She wasn't ready for a walk like that. Nobody is. Even if you're ready for a walk like that in this weather.
There's no way you're ready for a walk like
that.
In Detroit?
Yeah, this was in Detroit.
No.
So let's move it more locally, because we've got plenty of racist scandal in Virginia right next to D.C. here. What do you got for us?
All right, y'all. So your favorite governor, so I'm just kidding, Ralph Northam has been a racist all this time. He was the Democratic elected governor of Virginia. He literally just got elected in 2017. One of the first Democrats to be elected in Virginia. You know what? No, not in a while, because the guy who was the governor before him was Democratic. But it's a big deal because Virginia is a swing state. Anyway, some pictures of him came out in his yearbook from 1984 where he was seen being racist. And I know what you might be thinking. Oh, what is he doing? Is he holding a noose? Oh, what is he doing? Is he throwing up the white power sign? No, it's way worse. Okay? So bad that he won't even say which person he is. It's a man in full-on blackface. I'm talking about a hat, a wig, face painted, the whole outfit, everything. And he's standing beside another white gentleman who is wearing a KKK robe and hood. And they're posing, smiling for a picture. No, I didn't say 1954. I said 1984, okay? just a little while ago, he thought it was okay. And when the picture surfaced, everyone was like, what were you thinking? What are you doing? Which guy are you? And he's like, I'm not telling you which one I am. As if it matters, because both of them are extremely horrible. So he originally planned to hold his position. He was like,
he was trying to ride it out.
Yeah, he was like, I'm sorry. I'm going to do all the work to show you how greatly sorry I am and how much I can change and revert racism and all this stuff, but I don't plan on resigning from my position. Okay, well, then he got calls from presidential candidates and calls from his predecessor, the previous governor of Virginia, and all these people like, hey, you have to resign. You can't come back from this. Not only are you making yourself look really bad, you're making all of us look bad. And as of today, this morning, he will be resigning. That's not the great news, okay? The great news is the lieutenant governor of Virginia, a black man who goes by the name of Justin E. Fairfax, will now be the governor of Virginia. What news to be getting on February 2nd, 2019, kicking off Black History Month strong. Go Justin Fairfax. I can't wait to see what you do. And, you know, he's only the second black governor ever to be elected in Virginia. That's a really big deal.
That's pretty good.
I thought Virginia, people laugh at me, but I thought Virginia was doing a good job at, like, being woke and being a little bit more liberal. They getting their stuff together.
Charlottesville's pretty good, yeah.
Well, I take it back, y'all. I'm from Virginia, if you didn't know. I be trying to stand for my state, but we be out here cutting up.
Yeah.
It's kind of unfortunate that the only reason we're getting our second black governor is because the first governor before him did some extremely racist stuff.
Yeah,
so I
look,
get it. I get it.
Look, I don't even have patience for you if you were racist when everybody else was racist, like back in those times, right? So now 1984. I'm sorry, Run DMC was huge in 1984.
He knew better.
I was born in 1984. Like, there's a lot. I don't know what Run DMC has to do with it, but anyway, you know, it's like we too far removed from where you think it's all right to publicly have pictures out like that and be like, well, I didn't know, right? You knew at the time. You guys were just in the club, and it was fine over there.
They didn't find this picture in the basement in a box at his mom's house. This picture was published in his school yearbook. Public.
Oh, can we throw away the whole school then?
I would actually really love to throw
all
away
the graduates.
Whole school. Okay.
All the graduates, everybody. Just, is that too much?
That's a little much.
You know what? I'm just trying to err on the side of caution here, and just say, just in case, you know, just get rid of all of them.
Speaking of racism in America, let's talk about some more people who are known to be racist. The Republican Party of the United States.
Oh, damn. I wasn't ready to get a pitch like that. Accurate enough, so I'll let that sit there. That's going to make our right-wing listeners pretty upset.
Sorry, y'all.
But you know what? We thrive off of controversy here at What's the Deal, right? That's not what we do. We're pretty balanced and even. You know, we just give you facts. So listen, what do you think about voting in America? Is that like, you for it?
I mean, I think everyone should have the right to vote, if that's what you mean.
Sure, yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
is voting a good thing? It's a good thing, right?
It's a great thing.
Okay, cool. So the Republicans actually maybe disagree with that.
Oh, okay, here we go.
No,
sorry, right-wingers.
So in the House of Representatives, which is now controlled recently by the Democrats, they passed the For the People Act of 2019, which is a big, sweeping kind of legislative effort with 7 major changes that they want to enact to encourage voting, to make it easier for people to vote and access the polls on Election Day. And when this was sent over to the Senate, Mitch McConnell, I mean, it just boggles my mind. He called this bill a power grab.
Oh, God.
By Democrats. And if it's a power grab, you got to stop and say, okay, well, where are they sending the power? Right? This is not a law that says like, nah, you know, Republicans are no longer allowed to become judges, right? Like, it's not anything like that. It's saying we want Americans to vote. We want to make it a little bit easier. One of the things was you can register on Election Day, which according to some research cited by the New York Times, it could possibly increase 3 percentage points, around 3 or 4 million people every election day. if you can go on a spot and register. Okay, what's the big deal with that? Doesn't seem like a problem, but Mitch McConnell and Republicans leading this country think that that's like a nefarious plot by the Democrats.
I'm just confused about why everything has to be made into such a big deal. Like, we're not talking about, I don't even know what could garner such a big response. We're talking about voting. It's simple. There's no reason for anybody to be reacting in this way.
Right. So, I mean, and this comes after the midterm elections where there was a lot of allegations and evidence, in fact, of voter suppression and tampering.
Always.
And it was in favor pretty much every time it was published to the Democrats, right? So to the Republicans. That was a big mistake. Shoo. Yeah, that would have been a wrong thing to say.
Oh my God.
So this is a controversial topic. Republicans pass a lot of bills regularly, voter ID laws and other things to make it honestly more difficult to vote. So it's strange that voting has become a partisan issue in the country. But what also struck me is really bad about his comments is that he also characterized this as another handout, free money to lazy government workers.
Who?
Mitch McConnell said this.
Who are the lazy government workers? You know what? Wait,
the lazy government workers are the same ones who they just screwed for the last 35 days. And that's what I'm saying. Like, that is so just, vile. Like, it's just nasty. Like, what is wrong with you? You just upended so many people's lives, and then a week later, you're out here calling them lazy. Say this is just a handout for a federal holiday, and they're gonna get paid, and they don't have to come into work. Like, dude, what is wrong with Republican leadership? Like, I don't understand how they can justify things like this.
The only correlation that I can see between making Election Day a national holiday and letting people take the day off being, related to being a power grab for Democrats is if you're trying to say that Democrats make up the working class of America. Is that what he's trying to say?
There might be. I mean, look, it might be that they have very good reason to believe that the more people turning out to vote, that more people lean slightly more towards the Democrats, and then overall this will be a net problem for Republicans. And if that's what you think, then you just got to come straight out and say it, man. You're not in favor of democracy. Like, you're not in favor of it. Because the bottom line is that's what that means. If you think more people voting will be a benefit to the other side, then you are literally opposed to the idea of just the theoretical concept of voting in a popular democracy. That's it. Because it's only acceptable if you can game it to where it's going to benefit your side. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, well, why even have the voting then if that's really how you feel?
I just ran out of my energy to talk about Mitch McConnell. I'm running out of my energy to hear the name Mitch McConnell. I don't know how he's even still in office. He's always in some sort of scandal or controversy. Like, I don't understand anymore. I just don't get it. I really don't.
Yeah, so look, if you have a way you can reason this out and defend that position, let me know. Hit me at Steve Discourse on Instagram. You can tweet me too, but I'm not as active on Twitter these days.
I find him.
Yeah, Twitter kind of stresses me out, to be honest with you. I don't need these little debates back and forth, 1-1-1-1-1. That's
that was funny. Everything's funny to me today.
Well, that's good, because it's not funny to me. So we need that. I need those laughters to bring me up, because all this stuff brings me down sometimes. So I think we're going to wrap up and we're going to get to the interview with Jasmine Fassett.
I'm too excited, man. Talking about education is the thing that keeps me going. So I want to jump right into this.
After this quick break, we'll be right back.
While we're on this break, we want to remind you, do not forget to share the podcast. Share it to all of your social media platforms, your Facebook, your Instagram, Twitter. Don't forget to use the hashtag #What'sTheDealPod whenever you share anything. And like and subscribe the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, wherever you listen. Thanks for spreading the love. You know we appreciate you.
All right, what's good, everybody? We're back. I'm Steve Discourse.
It's Jay Callie.
As promised, we got our amazing guest in the building, Jasmine Fassett.
Yes, Jasmine Fassett has a master's in developmental psychology and a psychology specialist degree in school psychology. You know what? I'm really curious. What exactly does that mean?
So that is a question I get often whenever anyone asks me that, because it seems like an unknown area, and it's really broad. So just to kind of help, I'm going to read just a statement from the National Association of School Psychologists, and then we can kind of just break it down from there. So, according to NAS, it says school psychologists are uniquely qualified members of school teams that support students' ability to learn and teachers' ability to teach. They apply expertise in mental health, learning, and behavior to help children and youth succeed academically, socially, behaviorally, and emotionally. School psychologists partner with families, teachers, school administrators, and other professionals to create safe, healthy, and supportive learning environments that strengthen connections between home, school, and the community. And that is like a mouthful. And it's still what in the world do you do? Like, you just said a lot, but you're not saying much, honestly. And what it really comes down to is how a school district or a school chooses to utilize that school psychologist. So your grad school program can consist of a lot of different areas where you're trained in, and no grad school program is alike. So you may see a lot of data collection, assessment, just consultation, mental health interventions, academic and learning interventions, behavior interventions, special education services, crisis intervention or prevention, or even postvention. It's just a long list. Family and community connection.
So what are you doing in your specific position right now?
So right now, I teeter between I have a caseload of students who either receive special education services or receive services on a 504, and they have behavior support services. So I do a lot of like counseling with whatever goals that they may have, whether it's trying to focus, processing difficulties. It's a range of things that I may just help them with. And then also the testing piece. Luckily for me, I'm only in one building. So I don't have to travel around, and I really get to know my kids and spend time with them. But that's not usually the case.
One building meaning just one school?
Just one school.
So other psychologists have multiple schools.
Have multiple schools.
Yes.
A lot of psychologists, they may have 2, sometimes 3 schools that they travel in between throughout the week. And most of the things that they do is just testing. That's it. Because they have so many schools that they have to hit within that week, and they're just cranking out these reports. You have a time frame that you have to get it done. Between as soon as you get the permission from the parent, you have to get your testing done, the report written, and the meeting done within a certain time frame, so they don't always have the opportunity to do the counseling or just spend time with getting to know that school environment fully and become fully intertwined in the school environment.
So some psychologists, you're saying, are running around just spending most of their time emphasized on executing these tests.
Yeah.
But you have an opportunity to do some other work as far as developing relationships with the students. Can you just dive into that a little bit and the pros and cons?
I think it comes down to what your interests are and what you want to do. For me, when I was in grad school, I was like, I want to be school-based. Like, I only want one school. And the pro for me is that my students know exactly who I am. There's no question of who Miss Fassett is. They know where to find me. They know if I'm working late that day. You just really build these very strong relationships with the students and with the teachers, because they see you every single day and you become reliable. And that has made my job so much easier, just having the time building those relationships. This is my 3rd year at the school that I'm at now. And that now just being my 3rd year, I don't get as much pushback or like, who is this person in my classroom? Right. It's just like, hey, Miss Fassett, how you doing? Sit in.
So earlier, I want to throw it back to the testing piece. You talked about, so it's kind of like 2 questions I want to ask. Okay. One, can you break down what is an IEP for like the listeners and for the people who may not know? And then what are some of the other purposes behind all of the testing that school psychologists do?
Okay, so IEP is an individualized education plan, and this is from IDEA. It's a federal law. Basically, I look at it as a legal document that is helping break down what this kid is struggling with and what supports are we putting in place, what goals are we setting to help them reach. And overall, that's the way I view it, is like, they have struggles. What are we about to do? And this is a legal document, and y'all have to follow. Y'all have to follow every single thing that is in this document, whether it's accommodations, whether it's like the student may need extra time for something, or it's certain materials that they need to help them. Is really to put them in a place where they can continue to progress academically within the general education population. So if a student has an IEP, you're basically saying without any supports, they will fail. They cannot be successful in the general education population. So this is what we're looking at, and this is what we need to do to help support. And what was your second question about testing? I'm sorry.
What is like the purpose behind all of the other psychological tests that you might be performing?
So that can help feed and determine what the goals may be. So if a student is really weak in the math area, you can determine what goals that you may need to set for math. That's just an example. It also can help with determining how they're going to qualify. So there's 13 different categories that you can qualify for special education under. I can't remember every single one off the top of my head, but that helps to feed the information. And you're not supposed to just determine based off of just testing. It's supposed to just be background information, testing, teacher reports, you're supposed to bring a whole lot of information to the table and be able to determine what supports this student needs, what qualifications, what disability category they will fall under. And it's usually, you got to check off the list. It's like, if they don't meet one of the qualifications, then they won't qualify under that disability. Yeah. So that's really, it's just a component. It's not supposed to be the main part that determines if a student receives an IEP or not. It's just part of the process. Yeah.
So what role does the school psychologist play when it comes to diagnosing students with mental health issues, or other than educational disabilities? What about social or emotional or mental health disabilities?
A lot of disabilities you may see can happen from a clinical psychologist. So it's definitely a difference. I can't diagnose. You okay?
No, I'm agreeing with you. Yeah. Sorry.
So I can't diagnose someone with schizophrenia. That's not, for example, that's not in my training. I may be able to say I have noticed symptoms of certain things, or these are the characteristics I have seen, but I don't have the credentials, the licensing, the training to say that they have certain disabilities.
Is that something that certain schools may look for in a school psychologist, or is that because you say some schools have different criteria and training that they're looking for? I think most
schools, if you truly understand the job that you're posting, you should know that that's not something that falls under a school psychologist.
So okay, yeah. I see.
So I'm not necessarily diagnosing for those type of, for bipolar or anything like that. That is definitely out of my lane, and I'm very good at staying in my lane. And that's something when you're a NAS member and all those things, they're very strict on whatever your expertise is, that's what you work under that. You don't, and if you need more training or things like that, or you become credentialed in things. So if I know that is something that is way, that's above me, or that I will not pretend or anything, I'm not stepping into that lane, and we need to bring in someone who has the right credentials and training in that.
That was actually going to be one of the things I asked you about, because I don't think a lot of people always recognize the differences between a psychologist, a school psychologist, a school counselor, a clinical mental health counselor who is school-based. especially sometimes leaders inside of school buildings, because they might hire one, like, oh, you can just do all of these things, right?
no.
But they're totally different jobs.
Yeah, everyone is so different. Sometimes when people they hear psychologist, they're like, oh, you must do, they just run down a list. You do all these things. I'm like, wait, hold up. First of all, I'm credentialed to work with pre-K through 12. Let's start there. I don't work with adults. Like, so that's one of the biggest things. But, the difference that I see, like with a school counselor, school social worker, they're not doing the testing. That's one of the biggest things, because you have to be really trained into doing that and be, have the credentials to do that. My training looks different than what a social worker
might be trained to do.
They might, and like I said, every program may be different. So some programs may put a little bit more emphasis on counseling. Some programs may be like, we test, like this is what we do. You're going to be the best tester out there.
Yes.
So every program looks different. So I do work with social workers, and just their background and their knowledge that they have with like mental health and counseling, and the toolbox that they have is like impressive to me. And I enjoy talking to them. And even though I'm like a school psychologist, like I said, it's so broad, so you have a lot of different things that you're learning, and I'm learning from them, but our backgrounds and our training is completely different.
So I kind of just want to say this just to offer a little bit more clarity. Like, the biggest piece is the difference between being a school psychologist or being a school counselor or being a school social worker, which is a very specific job where you're trained to work inside of a school, and really that's it.
Yes.
Versus being a clinical psychologist, a clinical social worker, or a clinical counselor who has the option to be school-based.
Yeah,
which means you are trained to diagnose, you're trained to be a clinician. You can work with adults, you can work with children, but if you prefer to only work in a school setting, you can. But if you choose to work outside of a school setting, you have the certifications to do that. And within the school system, if you are a licensed clinician, you do have the ability to diagnose with bipolar, with schizophrenia, with whatever mental health needs those students have, and to counsel them through it. And that's just the biggest difference.
Yeah. Okay. And a lot of people they just see the title and they just assume that you do it all.
Right. So they either see psychologist and they assume that you're a clinician, or they see that you work in a school, and some people might say, oh, so you're a school counselor. Right. It's like, no, it's one or it's the other. They're not the same.
Right.
So what are the challenges that students are facing that the rest of us out there, parents or just people in the community, should be aware of that maybe we don't understand is an obstacle for kids succeeding in school?
So there's a number of different things that I realized, and maybe I saw it as a student. I didn't pay much attention to it, and as an adult, I pay a lot more attention. I'm just more sensitive and more aware of things. One of the things is just I guess you can call it like the competition between one another, just trying to impress, like that pressure of trying to be as good as their peers, whether it's what you have on, whether it's academically. It's a lot. Sometimes the kids feel a lot of pressure because they see how successful someone else may be or what they have, and that can cause some insecurity within them. And we may just be like, man, just suck it up. But it's not that easy to just suck it up. Bullying is something that is an overused term because it becomes everything. Everyone is bullied. Like, sometimes kids, they tease each other, but they're like going back and forth. It's like they think it's funny. They're jabbing at each other back and forth. And I'm not, necessarily condoning that, but I think everything isn't bullying. It has to be some type of power difference, between the two people. But it does happen though, and I do see it, and I have to step back and like, you're the adult, like you can't pop off on a kid. But I've always been that person. If I saw someone who couldn't handle something for themselves, like just ready to step in, like, what you not gonna do, like that is like not Miss Fassett, like that's Jasmine, like I'm ready,
right?
But I have seen my students who they appear a certain way, so they become easier targets, and that can go really bad. if that student doesn't have like a certain support system or adults within the building that they trust, or even like as long as they don't feel isolated within their friend group, it can go bad. So those are some of the things. Those are two things that I noticed that our students are really, struggling with. And then when something is going on outside of school, we have to remember our kids carry that load with them wherever they go. So as professionals working in the school, we have to be very understanding. So to me, it's so important to get to know our students. And it doesn't mean I'm all up in your business. I need to know every single thing you did this weekend. I got to make sure you're good. It's not like that, but just a natural relationship building. So you can develop just some compassion and understanding of what they may be going through, and not just assume because they acting out like they're just a bad kid, or where they IEP at. It's not always that. Is we all have things that we go through, and the hope is that we just learning these skills that we develop these skills to be able to deal with it. But a 9-year-old may not quite have it yet.
So what kind of support is still lacking? Give us a sense of where you think the needs lie.
Well, for first, there's just a shortage in school psychologists. And so it's not that many as it need to be. Like there's always there's always a need for us, because legally you need someone to be able to do this work, or you're going to have a whole lot of issues on your hand if you have someone who's not credentialed testing a student. It's not going to go well for you, and you'll lose that case. It's not, but there's a shortage. So there's always a job somewhere. Someone is always looking for a school psychologist. I remember seeing the job posting for like U.S. Virgin Islands, what? And I thought about it. I was like, but I love my family. I wasn't ready to leave my nephews, but is always a job, but it's not enough school psychologists to fulfill that. Ideally for me, I would love for like every school to have just one school psychologist. Yes. I would love that. I know 9 times out of 10 that's not going to happen. So you're like constantly trying to get people interested into the profession and explaining the need of them, because it can be a really quick burnout. Sometimes school psychologists that get to 5 years and they're like, I'm done.
Oh, God, yes.
So earlier you mentioned some psychologists are going across from 2, 3, 4 schools at a time. Is that a function of like a lack of budget, or not enough psychologists, or maybe administrators think this is all we need them for, so we're just hiring for that limited capacity?
I think it might be a combination of all those things. Okay. I think, we want to get paid. Let's we want to get paid, and I'll backtrack. I don't do what I do just because of the money. I tell students, I was like, trust me, I don't get paid as much as you think I do. But you also want you want your worth. You know what you're worth, and you want to get paid what you're worth, which is okay. But sometimes budget does come into play. Sometimes it's just not enough. So it's like, listen, you're gonna be here. You're gonna have to suck it up for these 2 schools, I need you to do it. And I think administrators don't fully understand the importance of, not all administrators, I think some administrators don't fully understand the importance of school psychologists and why we need them. I feel that way even when it goes down to like the professional development, like during the school day. When you have professional development in the schools, 9 times out of 10 is not geared towards what the school psychologists need. You have to kind of go outside of what's happening in your school, but they always have stuff for the teachers. They kind of have an understanding, because a lot of times the principal was a teacher, or they know they have an understanding, but they don't always know what the school psychologists need. So it takes you going up to people like, hey, I need this type of training so I can stay credentialed, or I can all of that. But I just think it's it's a combination of things why, a school psychologist may have, more than one school.
Let's finish this way. Why do you love your job? What do you love most about it? And what are some administrators maybe not understanding that you're really bringing to the table?
Why do I love, I always knew like I was going to work with children. As it was just no doubt in my mind that that's what I was going to. I have just so much passion and so much joy. It was just determining how was I going to do it. And there's so many different things you can do. So I was thinking like, all right, come on, you done graduated undergrad, like you want to work with children, but what really are you going to do? So I had to reflect back on my life and how I was as a student, specifically in elementary and middle school, and I was terrible to say the least. I wasn't the best behaviorally. I was that student who did well academically, but kind of ticked people off because I was, acting up, with certain teachers. But there were people who really believed in me and like sold into me however I needed and kind of propelled me to do well. So I thought about, I'm like, I'm gonna work in the school. Like I want to be a person who makes a difference, but can be a low-key difference. Like I don't need to be recognized or anything like that, but who's going to be there to be helpful and like bring a different thing to the table, understanding like why someone may be struggling behaviorally, what is going on, why someone is struggling academically. And every day is not a successful day for me, but sometimes a kid will come into my office and they'll be like, Miss Fassett, I got that 3.5 because we did boom, boom, boom. And like, I've been wanting to cry on the inside. Right. It feels so good. Or a parent that will say like, Miss Fassett, thank you for being so consistent with my kid. I know they have been struggling behaviorally. I know how they've been struggling academically. You've been rocking with them for 3 years and you've been very consistent with them. That feels good. And so when I get frustrated I can't figure out how to help this kid because I get stumped, I always have those little things in my back pocket that reminds me why I do what I do, why I enjoy what I do. And there's always a light somewhere. I mean, it may be a little dark for like a week or two, but at some point it's going to be a bright spot, and it's going to be something that reminds you that you're here for the kids, you're an advocate for the kids, and you love, as much as they may frustrate you, you absolutely love them, and you love being a support for them.
Wow.
Awesome.
I really love letting educators and people who work within schools come into the studio and talk to us about this stuff, because it really ignites my flame. Like, yeah, that's true. Like, that's really how it feels to be around children. Like, that's exactly it. Like, I feel, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, this was awesome. Jasmine Fassett, thank you for coming in.
No problem at all.
All right, people, thanks so much for tuning in another week. What's the Deal podcast?
You can follow us on social media
at Steve Discourse.
And you can catch Jay Callie.
It's Jay Callie, ITSJAYCALLI.
We got to send a big shout out to Clifford Cartel for composing our theme music. And wherever you listen to this, make sure you subscribe.
Family, subscribe.
Write us a review.
Share the podcast. Subscribe to it wherever you listen.
Share it with your friends, family, your loved ones. Heck, share it with your enemies. We don't care. Just help us spread that word. We truly appreciate it.